the Honorable Minister for Education, Heritage and Arts, Honorable Rosie Akbar, the Honorable Minister for Health and Medical Services, Honorable Dr. Mereseini Vuniwaqa, the Honorable Assistant Minister for Youth and Sports, Honorable Alvik Maharaj, Permanent Secretaries, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Today, on this historic day for our country, I first would like to acknowledge the many women and girls who have been murdered, injured, abused, or otherwise harmed by men who profess to have loved them. It is for them that we are doing this. It is for them that we sit here today to talk about this very important issue. Fijian women and girls experience violence and abuse at the hands of men they know, often in their own homes and often repeatedly, sometimes over many years, even over their entire lifetime. We know this violence by many names and in many forms: family and domestic violence, intimate partner violence, emotional abuse, sexual harassment, rape, femicide, and others. The prevalence of violence against women in Fiji is among the highest in the world, with almost 2 out of 3 women, 64% of women, who have been subjected to physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, double the global average, which is 1 out of 3 women. And most cases are perpetrated by an intimate partner. Violence against women and girls in Fiji is a national crisis. The murder of women and girls, especially in the context of domestic settings, is often the final result of a long history of abuse. In 2019 alone, 10 Fijian women were killed by their intimate partners. It is important to recognize and acknowledge that there are not only painful personal stories behind these statistics, and I would like to acknowledge Honorable Rosie Akbar for sharing with us her personal experience in these regards. There are also attitudes, social norms, and cultural complacency, attitudes that are embedded in gender inequality, gender discrimination, and patriarchy. To me, knowingly or not, we give our boys the license to act abusively, and it's up to girls to adjust accordingly. This isn't nature. This isn't nurture. We dismiss boys' aggression as a function of their masculinity, and we rationalize it. The more we conform to gender stereotypes, masculine, strong, assertive, and powerful, and feminine, submissive, pretty, and weak, the conditions remain ripe for Fijian men and boys to exert power and control over women and girls. Power we covertly tell our boys is theirs through tradition, socialization, and role models. Violence against women and girls is rooted in gender-based discrimination and social norms and gender stereotypes that perpetuate such violence. Regardless, ladies and gentlemen, global evidence confirms that this significant social problem is ultimately preventable. This means there's considerable scope for us as individuals, as a community, as leaders, and as a nation to prevent violence against women and girls before it occurs and stop it before it starts. The government of Fiji recognizes its obligation to prevent violence against women and girls. I'm deeply honored to stand here today with my colleagues and share with Fijians that the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation will lead the development of a 5-year 2020 to 2025 National Action Plan to prevent violence against women and girls. Once developed, Fiji will be one of the only 2 countries in the world to have a whole-of-government, inclusive, evidence-based approach to prevent violence against women and girls. Fiji's National Action Plan to prevent violence against women and girls will focus on preventing domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and sexual violence against women and girls, with an emphasis on stopping violence before it starts. Data and evidence from Fiji demonstrate that these are the most prevalent or widespread forms of violence against women and girls, which urgently need to be addressed. I shall confirm and elaborate that the National Action Plan to prevent violence against women and girls will include both primary prevention and secondary prevention strategies and approaches. A primary prevention approach involves working with whole communities to address the underlying root causes of violence, attitudes, behaviors, social norms, and practices that cause violence against women and girls. Secondary prevention, referring to response services that aim to stop repeated experiences of violence after it has already happened. Allow me to highlight that the key components of the Fiji National Action Plan will include an explanation of why violence happens in Fiji. In order to solve a national problem, there must be an evidence-based as well as a shared understanding among us Fijians for what causes it. The National Action Plan will explain, using data and evidence, what the root causes of violence against women and girls is in Fiji, and what additional contributing factors that makes the violence more likely to happen. It will further outline the key strategies and actions needed to address the factors that cause and contribute to violence against women and girls. It will also look at how the different environments in which Fijians live, work, learn, socialize, pray, and play can be key settings for prevention activities, including education, health and social services, sports and recreation clubs and spaces, faith-based contexts, and so on. It will also map out the different stakeholders and their roles, responsibilities, expertise, and capacities to prevent violence against women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Action Plan will be accompanied also by a national communication strategy and an implementation plan to ensure alignment and consistent messaging on prevention across a variety of channels to reach multiple levels of society in Fiji. I shall emphasize that the National Action Plan will be developed in a consultative and participatory manner, engaging citizens, both government and non-government actors alike, with responsibility for various stages of design and implementation assigned appropriately. This means a series of nationwide consultations and dialogues with Fijian women, men, girls, and boys, stakeholders from key settings and communities, will be undertaken in 2020 to inform the development of the National Action Plan. To me, a national conversation that honors and does justice to the experiences of women and girls who have for too long suffered in silence, some paying the ultimate price. Ladies and gentlemen, the extent and depth of change required to end violence against women is daunting. It will not happen overnight, but the time for change is here and now. It is time to further our collective action that takes all of us working at the same time towards the same goal. I'm hopeful and dedicated. I'm optimistic that we may arrive much sooner than we expect to our desired destination, gender equality, the most desirable travel destination for me in my journey as a Fijian and as a politician. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Honorable Vuniwaqa. Minister for Health and Medical Services, Honorable William Vete. The Assistant Minister for Employment, Productivity, Industrial Relations, Youth and Sports, Honorable Maharaj, invited guests, permanent secretaries, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. I stand before you this morning not only as a minister, but as a woman, a daughter, an ex-wife to someone, and a mother, with a personal mission to help in the prevention and elimination of violence against women and girls, to start off in Fiji and probably change the current circumstances that we have. And I think we need to do it for forever. No compromises, no justifications to violence against anybody. For no form of violence in our lives, in our homes, in our schools, and definitely not in our beloved nation. Honorable Minister for Health, when he was talked about respectful relationships. And I think that's the way forward. We need to respect each other. And I think that is something that is lacking, and we need to work on that. Without respectful relationships, I think this situation that we have currently will continue. My stance in this situation has not gone unnoticed since my public declaration in Parliament last year, August, and of course the deep traumatic and personal history of violence in my family when I grew up. I'm not going to spend all the 14 years of what we went through, but I'm going to go to that specific night and that specific day when my mother finally decided to break free. Because believe me, if a woman does not decide to break free from a violent relationships, it has a lot of impact on the children. And I think I would like to sort of commend all those women who finally find the courage to walk away. I can still recollect that horrific night, the last week of school. I was in class 8, December 1984. 14 years old, surrounded and comforted by my 3 other siblings who were 15. The younger sister was just 3. We watched early in the morning, helplessly, how my dad beat up my 9-month-old pregnant mother and throw her out of the family home early that morning. Because after spending 20 harrowing long years with a man who treated her like this, she finally decided that she had had enough and she had to leave. Why it took her 20 years, I couldn't understand. But now I do. She was trying her very best for us, her 4 children, and the one that was about to come. She was trying her very best to save her marriage, to give us a normal childhood, to avoid the societal shame, to avoid being judged by the community, and reasons she's still not ready to share. She's still alive, she's still not ready to share those reasons why. But I think we know why. A lot of factors contribute to that. The stereotype views that we have, the patriarchal societal norms, expectations. There's so many things like that. Man, the macho man, where to go, who's going to look after you, how can you burden somebody else with your children, financially you don't have the money to look after, and the list goes on. It also dawned in me that my mom stayed because she hoped one day my dad, the man who promised to look after her, the man who promised to look after the children, would change and perhaps give us the love and respect we deserved, or she deserved, rightfully deserved, like every other woman. One would think that that episode, that incident early in the morning, would break my father's heart and make him repent or probably beg her to come back. We wished that our mom would come back, either to take us with her, which my father did not allow. So we cuddled in together, the 4 of us, and tried to go back to sleep that night with whatever little was on the dinner table. Not even the wildest of our dreams did we imagine that we would wake up at about 3 a.m. I still remember the early hours of the next morning, the same morning, to be dragged out of our house by my elder brother amidst fire and smoke. We could hear tins popping, we could hear things exploding because we had a shop next to our house. And to make it worse, when you live in a village, you have fuel like kerosene and Zoom and everything stored inside the small shop that we had. So there was explosion. So when we finally managed to escape the fire with my elder brother dragging us out half asleep, the first thing that came to my mind was, where was my dad? Was he safe or was he still inside the house? Before I could react and run back to the house, I was 14 years old enough to know what was happening. So before I could run back, or before we all decided to run back, I was shocked to see my dad standing comfortably under a tree watching the burning house. And I still recall that weird sense of satisfaction that he had on his face. God knows what he was planning to do. The next day, the media and the newspapers carried stories of suspected arson. I think I have that newspaper clip somewhere, I don't know, but I think it's still in our family home. I didn't know what arson was, so I left it at that. Till today, I still wonder why my father behaved like this. Why he felt no remorse for my mother and us. And it dawns on me now that maybe he was also part of that cycle of violence, which probably made him think it was acceptable to do what he did. As his children, we have forgiven him. But we've never forgotten how we grew up in that violent environment. So ladies and gentlemen, when you have a scarred childhood, your future is shaped by the experiences that you go through. Sometimes I find it hard to explain to myself, why do I get these bouts of anger? Why do I suddenly want to destroy things that don't go my way? I keep it calm. Is it because I'm a girl? If I was a boy, actually this morning, it struck to me, if I was a boy, would I be any different from my father? Is it because I'm a girl that I grew up being more sensible, being more reasonable, with more passion, with more empathy? And I say no to violence. I'm sure all of us sitting in the room, including our honorable members here, sometime during our lives we've gone through this. Sometimes we have inflicted violence on our children. But again, let us pledge and say no. Let no child experience that, because believe me, it's very traumatic. It makes you think, sometimes it can make you a very nasty person. And I'm so glad I didn't follow the path that my dad showed us, that the answer to everything is violence and anger. And I think that's what we need to do as leaders. We need to promote that. No justification for violence. My mother used to wake up the next day with bruises and stuff and walk around as if everything was normal. Why? Why does any woman have to go through that? My father never lifted. Today I can say my father never lifted his hand on me. Physically, no. But what I saw has affected me emotionally. And many of us go through this just by growing up in that environment, just by seeing another human being that you love. Somebody who's given birth to you, go through this, day in, day out, year in, year out. We must put a stop to that. And the statistics that we have in Fiji and across the globe speaks for itself. We can keep talking, ladies and gentlemen. We can keep talking, we can keep making plans, everything. But we need to put life in all that, so that we can help it come to an end. And like I said, I genuinely believe no one should be subjected to what we, many millions like me or thousands like me, have gone through. No one should feel unsafe in their homes. But what hurts me today most is that my story, the stories of my siblings, the stories of my mother, is not unique. There's so many that suffer in silence. There's so many who do not have the courage to walk out. And I'd like to urge victims of domestic violence, please walk out of that. And then of course you know the role that men have to play, the role that communities have to play, the role that NGOs have to play, the role that governments have to play. We all will have to engage and see that we provide the much support and assistance. There's no support for us. You'd cry. No support for my mother. She'd go through that like many other women. We need to provide that support mechanism. When I joined the Ministry of Women in 2014, it actually got me thinking more in detail. That we all need to be the ambassadors of the change that we are seeking. Mindset changes. Legislations, we can do it. Funding, we can give it. Mindset changes is probably the most. And we all can work towards, each one of us. Every child. I'll come back to how we in education can do that. How do we socially empower our children? How do we empower? A woman needs to know, I don't need to be financially dependent to look after my children, because I think my mother stayed back because there was no form of income. Where would she take us? 4 of us, one about to come. Where? Lack of family support. And money plays a very important role to be able to look after your children, to be able to provide them with decent housing. You need money for that. So let's empower our women not only to be socially empowered, but also financially empowered. Like Ministry of Women is there, there's so many things that the government is doing to ensure that an education probably is the first step forward. I shudder to think what I would still be if I was still there. If my mom had not left that place, where would I be? I asked this of my children. What would I be? Would I be in a position to empower other women? Maybe not. So that support mechanism, ladies and gentlemen, is something that we all need to work towards. And family history of violence, ladies and gentlemen, increases the risk that boys and girls will experience or perpetuate violence as adults, should we choose that way. Women are more likely to experience violence as adults if they have also witnessed or experienced violence as children. I hope not. We need to break that. So the cycle of violence that must be broken in our homes, families, and society needs to start somewhere. I think we've started. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So today, I'm honored to stand next to my colleagues in this historic moment and share with you our combined endeavor to develop a 5-year national action plan to prevent violence against women and girls. Global evidence now demonstrates that violence against women and girls is preventable, and that too within as little span as 5 years is no exception. I pledge with dedication and passion that Minister of Education, Heritage and Arts will play a key role in contributing to this development and implementation of the Fijian National Action Plan to prevent violence against our women and girls. Education has been giving voice to women and girls in Fiji and globally, and has evidently played a hugely important role in the long-term empowerment. And of course, you and I all both know that education opens doors to knowledge, opportunities, and empowerment like nothing else. However, the access to education for women and girls comes with its own challenges. There are still many barriers to learning and personal attainments that are specific to our girls and women. While education can be life-changing, it can also reinforce deep-rooted gender stereotypes and inequalities in the society. While the free education scheme from our government creates equal opportunities for girls and boys to get a proper education, it is critical that the issue of gender inequality is better addressed through our education settings. Education has a significant role to play in transforming the root causes of violence against women and girls, gender inequality and patriarchy. Education settings at every level, early childhood, primary and secondary, have near universal reach to girls, boys and young people in Fiji. Therefore, it is potentially the most effective, in my view, avenue to help them identify and challenge gender stereotypes, attitudes, and harmful social norms and practices. While the ministry has an ongoing commitment in ensuring and promoting academic excellence, I pledge that the Minister of Education, Heritage and Arts will ensure we raise better men through various strategic interventions, including progressive gender-sensitive curriculums in our schools at all levels. We may be churning out the best of the best professionals through our education system. However, the role of education is never going to be fully fulfilled if we fail to raise men and boys who respect women and girls. We owe this to our daughters, we owe this to our sons, we owe this to our granddaughters, grandsons, and the many, many generations to come. And of course, this can be achieved by enabling prevention programs to be delivered in a context and setting where respectful, again, respectful, non-violent, healthy peer and gender equitable relationships can be normalized. And I also firmly believe that many of the life skills in violence prevention, such as respectful communication, managing emotions, resolving conflicts, and solving problems, are the same skills that can help school children succeed in school, and that can protect against other issues that's affecting us, affecting our learning, such as alcohol and drug abuse. Educators, staff, and parents will be supported to model the behaviors and attitudes that are taught to students in classrooms. We all shall reflect on that. Ladies and gentlemen, during national consultations in the development of the Fijian National Action Plan to prevent violence against women and girls, we will explore the best way forward for us in Fiji. I'm very much excited and very much looking forward to embark on this journey in my both personal and professional capacity. In summary and in conclusion, I would like to highlight that violence against women and girls is preventable, even in a short span of 5 years, but we need a whole of government approach. We need stakeholder engagements. We need communities, we need parents, all of us to come together. And education is one of the key settings that can address the underlying causes of violence. And if I can reiterate, it is through education that we can build characters of our boys and girls to grow up into men and women of quality and who are not afraid of equality. That's very important. We need a generation that is not afraid of equality. That's very important. We have a lot to do to make our plans in reality, and I look forward to working closely with everyone, including our media partners. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, and Honorable Minister, it's a pleasure for my ministry to be working with you in this plan of ours. Thank you very much.